Have you ever wondered what it would feel like if nothing and no one could make you angry anymore? Imagine someone insults you, criticizes you, even betrays you, and instead of exploding, shutting down, or pretending you're fine, you stay completely calm, almost untouchable. It's not because you don't care. It's because you've built a mind so strong that no one's behavior has the power to disturb your peace. Carl Jung called this one of the most unsettling discoveries of his career, because the people who mastered this state became immune to emotional attacks. Jung's most unsettling discovery wasn't just about learning how to manage anger. It was about the strange kind of people who simply don't get angry at all no matter what happens to them. And what he found was shocking. These people seemed almost immune to emotional attacks. They stayed calm when insulted, unaffected by criticism, and completely unbothered when someone tried to provoke them. They didn't take things personally, they didn't get defensive, and they didn't react the way most of us do when we feel triggered. Jung found this so disturbing because it wasn't that they were suppressing their feelings or practicing some detached philosophy. They had gone through a deep psychological transformation that made other people's behavior irrelevant to their inner state. It gave them a kind of emotional freedom that almost felt supernatural. What I want to show you today is exactly what Jung discovered about these rare individuals and how he believed anyone could follow the same process to reach a state where other people's actions no longer control your emotions. The story that led Jung to this breakthrough began with a patient he wrote about in his private notes, a highly successful businessman who came to see him in 1919. This man wasn't suffering in the usual way patients were. In fact, his problem was the opposite. His complete lack of emotional reaction was making people around him uncomfortable. Let's call him Heinrich. He had built a massive steel business in post-war Germany, and everyone who worked for him respected him, but they were also terrified of him, not because he yelled, punished, or humiliated them, but because nothing they did could shake him. Insults had no effect. Criticism only made him more curious. Even betrayal didn't hurt him. It fascinated him. His wife was the one who insisted he see Jung, because she was convinced there had to be something wrong with him. She said, "Doctor, my husband doesn't get upset about anything. Yesterday I told him I'd been having an affair for 6 months. He didn't yell, he didn't cry. He asked me 3 questions. Are you happy? Do you need anything from me? And do you want to stay married or end this?" But here's where Jung's discovery changed everything. Heinrich wasn't numb. He wasn't shutting down his feelings. He had simply learned to treat every emotional trigger as a mirror, a reflection showing him something about himself he had fully faced. Jung called this the shadow mirror effect. According to him, every person who makes you angry is really showing you something about your own unconscious mind. The rude coworker who dismisses your ideas is reflecting your fear of not being good enough. The friend who always shows up late is mirroring your hidden need to control situations. The relative who criticizes your decisions is actually showing you your own inner doubts. Heinrich discovered this principle after one of the worst betrayals of his life. 3 years earlier, his closest business partner had stolen his biggest client and nearly destroyed everything he had built. Most people would have wanted revenge. Instead, Heinrich asked himself one question: what part of me is this man reflecting? The answer shocked him. His partner's greed reflected Heinrich's own buried fear of losing everything. His dishonesty mirrored Heinrich's habit of hiding his real emotions. His betrayal showed Heinrich his own hidden capacity for selfishness. By facing these parts of himself, instead of blaming others, Heinrich reached what Jung later called psychological immunity. He learned to see people's behavior as information about them, not as attacks on him. Jung turned this insight into a process he called the Shadow Integration Protocol. He taught patients to ask 3 simple questions whenever they felt triggered. First, what trait in this person am I judging most? Second, where do I show this same trait in my own life, even in small ways? And third, what lesson is this trigger trying to teach me about myself? Take Sarah, a marketing manager who used Jung's method. She couldn't stand her colleague Tom because he kept interrupting her during meetings. Instead of getting angry, she asked herself the 3 questions. What am I judging? Tom's need for attention. Where do I do this? She realized she often dominated conversations when she felt insecure. What is this trying to teach me? That her anger at Tom was really anger at herself for her own attention-seeking behavior. After she owned that part of herself, Tom's interruptions stopped bothering her. She could see them as his insecurity, not a threat to her. That's the power of the shadow mirror. It turns your triggers into teachers. But Jung's research went even deeper, and this is where things get even more unsettling. People who reached this level of emotional immunity had discovered something most of us never experience: the gap between stimulus and response. Heinrich described this strange phenomenon to Jung. He said, "Doctor, when someone insults me, time seems to slow down. I can almost see their words coming toward me, but instead of hitting me, they stop in the air. In that moment, I get to choose. Do I take these words and make them mine, or do I just let them pass through me?" Jung realized Heinrich had found what he later called the reaction gap, a psychological space where you can consciously choose how to respond instead of reacting automatically. Most of us experience triggers and reactions as one seamless process. Someone says something rude, we snap back, but Heinrich, and others like him, had learned to insert awareness in that tiny space, which gave them control. This completely challenged what psychology believed about human behavior at the time. Most experts thought anger was automatic, like a reflex, but Jung's patience proved that with the right training, anyone could access this gap and choose a different response. Jung's technique for teaching this was surprisingly simple but incredibly powerful. He called it the observer protocol. Here's how it works. When someone triggers you, you don't react immediately. Instead, you mentally step back and observe the whole scene like you're watching a movie. You notice their words, their tone, their body language, but most importantly, you notice what's happening inside you without becoming it. Over time, this becomes second nature. Maria, a school teacher, used this method with her overly critical principal. Instead of feeling personally attacked, she learned to see his behavior as a reflection of his stress and pressure from the school board. This allowed her to respond calmly, with empathy, instead of defensiveness. Jung's big insight was this: you are not your emotions. You are the awareness behind them. Your anger is just information. You can act on it, analyze it, or let it pass by, but you don't have to become it. Heinrich had mastered this so completely that he described feeling like other people as negativity could pass through him the way light passes through glass. He wasn't avoiding his emotions, he was just refusing to let every impulse control him. But here's what Jung found most disturbing. Once people reach this state, they often stop caring about the everyday drama that consumes most people. They lose interest in being right, winning arguments, or proving themselves. This made them powerful but also set them apart from everyone else, still caught in emotional reactivity. The observer protocol is something anyone can practice. Jung found that with just a few weeks of consistent use, most patients could access the reaction gap. The steps are straightforward. Pause when you feel triggered and take a slow, conscious breath. Observe what's happening, both outside and inside, without labeling it as good or bad, and then choose your next move based on your values, not your impulses. This isn't about becoming cold or emotionless. It's about becoming the author of your responses, instead of letting other people write your script for you. Jung's work on emotional immunity revealed something else, another pattern that disturbed him. These people had what he called psychological boundaries, or boundary fortresses. These weren't physical walls, but mental filters that decided what was allowed to affect their inner state. Heinrich explained this to Jung perfectly. He said, "Doctor, I realize that people can only disturb my peace if I let them. Their words, their actions, their moods, these are external events. They only become part of me if I choose to take them in." This idea completely changed Jung's view of how most people live. He saw that the average person has completely open boundaries. They absorb other people's moods, stress, and negativity without question. Their happiness rises and falls based on what happens outside them. But people like Heinrich had built selective filters. Jung noticed three kinds of psychological boundaries in these individuals. The first was what he called the relevance filter. They only allowed in information that was useful for their growth or goals. Everything else was acknowledged but not absorbed. The second was the ownership boundary, the ability to separate their emotions from other people as emotions. If someone got angry at them, they could see that anger as belonging to the other person, not something they needed to carry. And the third was the identity fortress, a deep, solid sense of self that couldn't be shaken by criticism. They could hear feedback without hearing it as an attack on their worth. But there was a downside. Jung noticed that people with strong boundaries often attracted more difficult personalities. Toxic people, emotional manipulators, and energy-draining individuals were drawn to them like moths to a flame. Heinrich said he saw this constantly. "Ever since I stopped reacting," he told Jung, "people seem to try harder to get a reaction out of me. My calm bothers them more than anger ever did." Jung realized why. Most emotionally reactive people unconsciously use other people's reactions to regulate their own emotions. When Heinrich refused to play along, it forced them to deal with their own chaos, and that was uncomfortable. To help patients build these boundary fortresses, Jung created a step-by-step method. The first step was the emotional firewall. Before entering a stressful situation, you decide which emotions you will let in and which ones you will just observe without absorbing. The second step was response selection. You pre-decide how you'll respond to common triggers, so you don't react impulsively. And the third was the identity anchor, developing such a clear picture of who you are that other people's opinions become interesting data, not threats. David, a software engineer, used this approach with his overly demanding boss. Every morning before work, he set an emotional firewall. He told himself he would notice his boss's stress, but not take it personally. He chose calm, professional responses ahead of time. And he reminded himself that his value came from his skills and growth, not his boss's moods. Within weeks, David reported feeling almost untouchable at work. His performance improved, and interestingly, his boss started treating him with more respect, as if he could sense David's new psychological strength. This is the paradox Jung uncovered. The stronger your boundaries, the more people respect them. Others can sense when you're grounded, and they naturally adjust how they treat you. But Jung's most fascinating discovery came when he studied what he called projection reversal. People with emotional immunity had trained themselves to look past the surface of other people's attacks and see the wound underneath. Heinrich demonstrated this during one of his sessions. A rival had humiliated him publicly, calling him a heartless profiteer who didn't care about his workers. Instead of feeling angry or defensive, Heinrich felt curious. Dr. Heinrich said slowly, "This man's attack told me everything about his psychology and nothing about mine. His accusation that I was heartless revealed his own fear of being seen as unfeeling. His focus on money showed me how anxious he was about his own finances. His concern for workers exposed his guilt about how he treated his own employees." Jung was fascinated. He realized Heinrich had developed what he later called psychological X-ray vision. The ability to see through people's words and attacks and understand the pain, fear, and unresolved conflict driving them. Heinrich no longer saw insults as weapons. He saw them as windows into the attacker's inner world. Jung documented this over and over. Whenever someone attacks you, criticizes you, or tries to hurt you, they are always revealing something about themselves, not you. Every insult is like a message about their hidden struggles. Every harsh judgment shows their secret fears. This discovery was disturbing because it meant that most human conflict was actually about two people fighting each other. It was about two people projecting their own inner problems onto one another, like a movie screen. One person feels insecure about their success, so they accuse you of bragging. Another hates how they look, so they criticize your appearance. Someone feels stuck in life, so they make fun of your choices. They not really fighting you. They re-fighting parts of themselves they haven't accepted yet. Jung saw this projection pattern again and again. People who mocked others' looks were usually insecure about their own appearance. People who attacked others' success were often bitter about their own failures. People who judged others' decisions were often secretly unsure about their own. But here's what made this discovery so life-changing and unsettling. Once you can see projections clearly, you stop taking them personally. You stop reacting to insults because you see the pain underneath them. Instead of feeling attacked, you start to feel curious, even compassionate, about what that person must be going through to act that way. Heinrich described this change beautifully. "Doctor," he said, "when someone attacks me now, I don't see an enemy. I see a wounded child who doesn't know how to ask for help. How can I be angry at a child who is crying out in pain? Instead of feeling insulted, I feel curious about what hurt them and wonder if I can help." Jung considered this the ultimate stage of psychological immunity. When you can see attacks as expressions of pain rather than verdicts about your worth, he wrote, you become completely unbothered by other people's behavior. To teach this, Jung created what he called projection reversal. a mental exercise with 3 simple but powerful questions. The first question: what exactly are they attacking in me? The second: where might they be struggling with this same thing? The third: what pain or fear might be driving them to say this? This simple process can transform your emotional world. Take Lisa, a graphic designer. She was crushed when a client told her that her work looked unprofessional and amateurish. Instead of spiraling into self-doubt, she used projection reversal. She asked herself, what are they attacking? My professionalism. Where might they struggle with this? She remembered the client once mentioned feeling like an imposter in their industry. What pain drives this attack? Their fear of being exposed as unprofessional themselves. This insight changed everything. Instead of taking it personally, she saw the comment as a reflection of the client's own fear. She calmly addressed their concerns, made some improvements, and kept her peace intact. But Jung warned about a hidden challenge with projection reversal. Once you see through everyone's projections, you may start feeling detached, like you're watching a play instead of living in it. Relationships can feel strange because you no longer see people as attacking you. You see them as revealing their wounds. Heinrich confessed this to Jung. Sometimes, doctor, I feel like I'm the only adult in a world full of hurt children. I can see their pain so clearly that I can't take their behavior seriously anymore. Jung realized that this was the price of psychological clarity. The more you understand human behavior, the less you get caught up in the drama of it. But there was a danger here. If you go too far, you can become cold or detached from people. The key, Jung taught, was to keep compassion alive. Seeing someone's pain clearly doesn't mean you stop caring about it. In fact, the more clearly you see it, the more opportunity you have to respond with kindness instead of anger. But Jung's final discovery was even more powerful and more unsettling. His patients hadn't just learned how to avoid being triggered, they had learned how to use every trigger as fuel for their own growth. Heinrich explained this with a calm smile. Doctor, I no longer see difficult people as problems to avoid. I see them as teachers. The more someone can provoke me, the more I know they have something valuable to teach me about myself. This completely flipped normal psychology upside down. Most of us try to avoid people who annoy, frustrate, or anger us. But Heinrich actively sought out these moments because he saw them as opportunities to grow stronger. Every insult was a workout for his mind. Every betrayal was a chance to test and improve his emotional balance. This is what Jung called emotional alchemy, turning the raw material of pain, anger, and discomfort into wisdom, strength, and clarity. Heinrich had stopped running from his triggers and started mining them for gold. When something upset him, he would pause and ask, what is this person teaching me about myself? What weakness are they showing me that I need to work on? What hidden fear or shadow are they forcing me to face? Jung realized this made Heinrich almost impossible to control or manipulate. Nothing could be used against him emotionally because every challenge only made him stronger. External praise couldn't inflate his ego. He didn't need it. External criticism couldn't destroy his peace. He used it as fuel. You have this same potential. Imagine living in such a way that nobody can shake your inner world, not because you are cold or numb, but because you have turned every attack into an opportunity for wisdom. Emotional alchemy works in 3 steps. First is trigger mining. Instead of avoiding what annoys you, you dig into it and find the lesson hidden inside. Second is shadow integration. You look at the behavior that triggers you and ask where you might be guilty of a similar pattern, even in a small way, and bring it into your awareness. Third is strength synthesis. You consciously turn the insight into a new strength or habit that makes you a more grounded, resilient person. Take Marcus, a sales manager who was constantly triggered by his team's laziness. Instead of just getting angry, he practiced emotional alchemy. He asked, what is this teaching me? That I expect others to share my drive without considering their motivations. What weakness does this reveal? My inability to inspire people without pressuring them. What strength can I develop? The ability to motivate through connection, not fear. Marcus began learning motivational psychology, understanding his team's personal goals, and connecting their work to something meaningful for them. Within months, his team became one of the top-performing groups in the company. His frustration had turned into leadership growth, but Jung warned that emotional alchemy has its own shadow. Some people who master it start treating every interaction like an experiment. They lose empathy for those who haven't learned these tools yet. Heinrich himself felt this temptation. Sometimes, he admitted, I feel like I'm just running psychological experiments instead of living life. Every argument becomes data. Every conflict becomes research. Jung saw that the final challenge wasn't just to stay calm, but to stay human. The goal wasn't to become untouchable in a cold way. It was to become what Jung called anti-fragile, a person who grows stronger from every storm while still remaining warm, connected, and compassionate. This led Jung to his most profound conclusion. The highest level of psychological development was contagious immunity. It was what he called the compassionate warrior, someone who is fully capable of staying untriggered, but also fully capable of caring. Heinrich's life reflected this transformation. At first, his emotional strength made him seem distant, even intimidating. But Jung helped him realize that true strength is not just the ability to stay calm, it is the ability to stay calm, while helping others feel safe to express themselves. Heinrich learned to turn his psychological immunity into a gift for others. When his wife expressed anger or sadness, he didn't shut down or dismiss her feelings. He stayed centered but offered her space to feel heard. When his employees brought him problems, he didn't take on their stress, but he did listen fully, helping them find solutions. Jung called this emotional aikido, using the energy of others' emotions and redirecting it in a way that leads to healing and solutions. When someone brought Heinrich anger, he turned it into a calm conversation about solutions. When someone brought fear, he guided them toward courage. When someone brought sadness, he helped transform it into understanding. People started seeking him out in their worst moments, not because he reacted with them, but because his presence made them feel steadier. He became a lighthouse in the storm. Jung's final note about Heinrich was stunning. He had learned to stay completely vulnerable, fully open to feeling others' emotions, while remaining completely unshaken inside. This was the highest achievement Jung believed a human could reach, to be deeply connected and yet unbreakable. Heinrich's story proves that emotional immunity doesn't mean becoming cold or detached. It means becoming so psychologically strong that you can face anyone's chaos without being pulled into it. It means you can stay warm, kind, and connected no matter what happens around you. This was Jung's most disturbing and most liberating discovery. We are not prisoners of our emotions. We have the power to create space, to choose our response, and to turn every challenge into growth. Heinrich's journey, from shadow integration to building boundaries, to mastering projection reversal, to emotional alchemy, and finally to becoming a compassionate warrior, represents the complete map of psychological growth. You can walk this path to every time someone criticizes you, you have a choice. React blindly or turn it into insight. Every time someone tests your patience, you can see it as an attack, or you can see it as a chance to strengthen your mind. Remember Heinrich's final words: true strength isn't about avoiding what hurts you. It's about being able to touch life deeply, with all its pain and chaos, without letting it change who you are. Your journey starts today. The next time someone tries to disturb your peace, pause. Ask yourself, what are they really showing me about them, and about myself? Use it as fuel. Every difficult person is a mirror. Every challenge is an invitation. Every trigger is a teacher. The only person who can take away your peace is the part of you that still needs to be healed. Once you learn to see through projections, integrate your shadow, and practice emotional alchemy, you'll reach the stage Jung called psychological freedom. From that point on, nobody can make you angry unless you choose to be. And that, Jung believed, is the greatest power a human being can have.